Hello, everyone. Oh boy, now it's going to be me this week. That was not
And
intentional.
we're off again.
Oh boy. Okay.
Let me get a drink before we start too.
Yeah,
now that you just
why
did
does that
that.
always happen?
I should have just like a bottle of vodka here. Like, let me get a drink. We're gonna talk about Battlestar.
Kelsey and I always talk about how cool it is in film and movies when like someone walks into their office or walks into their home. This happened in The Twilight Zone for sure. And they just go to like that bar sitting up against the counter and they just already have like a bucket of ice. I'm like, I'm not a hard liquor drinker, but that makes me want to be a hard liquor drinker because it looks so goddamn cool when they do that.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, copy. Deja vu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deja Reviewed podcast, where we talk about the original versions of TV shows and movies that were later rebooted. In Season 2, we're discussing the first and only season of the original Battlestar Galactica. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark.
And today, we're discussing Episode 8. Gun.
You can't say this title without laughing.
It's so silly. Gun. And how did we not guess what this was about? Gun on Ice Planet Zero.
Wait, Mike, I checked
Part
on
1.
NBC. It is The Gun on Ice Planet Zero. That's a crucial difference.
But IMDb and Wikipedia say that it's Gun on Ice Planet Zero, so I don't know about NBC.
In the opening titles of the show, it says The Gun on Ice Planet Zero.
Did it really?
Yeah. Part
Okay.
1.
Anyhow, The Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 1 originally aired on October 22nd, 1978. It was directed by Alan J. Levi, written by Glenn A. Larson, Michael Sloan, and Donald P. Bellisario, and of course, starring the usual Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, Lorne Green. Let's give Herbert Jefferson Jr. a little bit of a shout out today.
Shields, Cree, keep visual contact. Don't cross into the day side. I'm picking up a flare, a brilliant bead of light, like an eclipse. I'm going to check it out.
Ready to fire. Fire.
Boom! Get out of there! Boom!
And the summary of this story from IMDb: a special task force, mostly made up out of convicts, is dispatched to destroy a giant Cylon-operated pulsar cannon on the planet Aracta, directly in the Colonial Fleet's path. Having lost a cadet on the planet earlier, Starbuck is eager to join the expedition for once. Boxy and Muffet also join the group as stowaways in one of the most predictable twists so far.
I don't know if it said that in the IMDb summary, but definitely one of the most predictable twists thus far. And I think whoever wrote that IMDb summary wrote the name of the planet wrong. I'm trying to find it in my notes. I think it's Arctica, because I noted it because I'm like, can we get any more obvious for the ice planet? It's Arctica, like Antarctica, but we took off the ant.
Well, let's not put it past anyone to miscategorize a summary of a 40-year-old TV show on IMDb.
Fair. Oh, I found it. It's Arcta.
Arcta. Okay.
Arcta.
Maybe I just missed Aracta. Yeah, no, it's Arcta. Okay. Mark, speaking of predictable things, this starts off with a very predictable thing. A Viper recon patrol leaves the Galactica. Starbuck and Boomer have these kind of newbies underneath them: Kree, Bo, and Shields. And can I say, if you are having a sci-fi space battle TV show or movie, don't name one of your pilots Shields. My note right off the bat was Kree is going to die, right? And it turns out Kree does not die, but Shields does, and Bo does. And when Shields dies, Starbuck yells out, "Shields!" And I was like, wait a minute, it's too late. It's too late for Shields.
I was super
Right?
confused too. I thought he was telling everyone else to put their shields up. And it
That's
was
what I
like 5
thought.
minutes later, I figured out that was the name of the character.
Right. Because basically these guys go out on patrol, Starbuck and Boomer leading these 3 cadets, and they're getting shot at from Arctica or whatever, the planet, from this gun on this ice planet that's destroying them from space. And so 2 of the cadets blow up and one of them vanishes. And so the whole rest of the episode basically is a search. Well, I actually really like this again too. The whole rest of this episode, I feel like, turns into Starbuck's search for that guy because he really has some nice internal conflict moments that Benedict did another nice job foregoing the mission to try and find this guy because he was underneath Starbuck on the patrol and Starbuck feels horrible. And I thought that was neat. But ostensibly, the rest of the mission is to blow up this gun on Ice Planet Zero.
We haven't talked much about this yet, so I don't know, but I'm sensing this might be one where we're going to disagree. I was watching this episode about halfway through. Last week we were debating whether we should continue on or not, and we decided to, and I'm like, I've made a huge mistake.
Okay. We're definitely going to disagree on this.
This episode,
okay.
I thought took... there were parts in this that worked that I like a lot. I also think, not to get into the star ratings and stuff yet, but I thought this episode in a lot of ways took a step back from where they have been, and maybe part of it was that they're back to this sort of split, part 1, part 2, and once again, they didn't really make this a standalone episode that had an arc in and of itself. It was all set up for what's going to happen next episode.
But at least they left it on a better cliffhanger that we will get to.
They did leave it on a cliffhanger, that's true. Going back to the beginning, I will say we now are back to showing clips from this episode on, which at least is 2 episodes in a row they've done the same thing now, which is the first time that has happened. So shout out to the editing crew for at least deciding what they're going to do and sticking with it for 2 episodes. And in the opening credits, I noticed they've added some more people in. Cassiopeia's character is now in the opening credits and credited where I don't think she was before. I didn't remember if Athena was normally credited or not. She was in there right after.
I don't know.
And the shot they have of Gaius, which is the same one they've had for a bunch of episodes, but we've never commented on it. It's hilarious. It's the shot of like, if you're on a camp out as a kid and somebody holds the flashlight under their chin to tell a scary story. That's the shot they have of Gaius, is just like looking evil with a flashlight under his chin.
To be fair, his throne is so high in the air that all light is beneath him. So, and I will say about this opening too, literally from the opening, my very first note, is this going to be like when Apollo in the reboot had to control the prisoners to work to help the fleet? Sure enough,
and your answer, yes.
Yes, that is exactly what it was. I really like that in the reboot, so maybe that's why I'm giving this one a little bit more credit. And if you recall, in the reboot, this is when they brought back Richard Hatch to play, I forget his character's name in the reboot, but he's basically the guy who leads the insurrection. He's the kind of the leader of the criminals.
Right, but ends up kind of becoming a politician and like integrating into the leadership structure. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that was really interesting, and I think that was fun that they brought back Richard Hatch for the reboot and found a way to have some continuity there. I mean, it's not continuous storylines playing a different character, but that's a nice little callback. I'm surprised, Mike, that you did not immediately call out the beginning for one of the things I know you hate, which is starting us in the middle of something where we apparently missed all the important information. Okay. They're out on a mission, and then we cut inside the Battlestar, and Adama's like, talking about how they defeated the Cylons in this battle, but the Cylons he thinks are hurting them. I'm like, did we miss like 6 episodes? Because it sounds like there was a whole story arc here that is just backstory.
That brings me to my next note. That specifically, and this is a cardinal sin in improv, show, don't tell. That reminds me of Star Wars, I think it was Star Wars episode 2, when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are having all these conversations. They're like, remember that great time we had, that great battle we had, and all that stuff, all these cool adventures we went on? It's like, can we see those instead of this horrible, boring politics movie? And
I think that's exactly episode 1, because Qui-Gon gets killed at the end of episode 1.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, like that whole episode is like long, boring conversations punctuated by a 45-minute pod race.
I apologize. It's Obi-Wan and Anakin that are talking about it. So I think it was episode 2 before they go chase whatever the hell happens in episode 2. So they're talking about all these amazing things.
The great love story, Mike. That's what happens in episode 2.
Yes, that's so funny you said that, because I am annoyed about that. Because Adama starts talking about this like very exciting sounding space battle that they had. I'm like, why aren't we watching this very exciting space battle? And again, I'm going to shout out, this was a very effects heavy episode. I thought the effects were good, and I thought there were a lot of them.
Yeah, no, the effects have held up throughout this show. And look, when we were talking about doing this before we started, I think, ironically, as it turned out, that was the thing we were the most worried about, is like, oh God, we've got to see cheesy 1970s space effects. And look, do these hold up to 2020 standards? No, but they're really good by late 70s standard period, much less television. Like, this has got to be way beyond what anyone else was doing in TV effects. Because I saw a lot of shows in the 80s that had much worse effects. I saw shows in the 90s and 2000s with worse effects than this.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on that, because this is a note from later on for me, one of the things that annoyed you right off the bat and is annoying me, I am never going to be able to be intimidated or afraid of those Cylons as long as those star filters are being used so aggressively, because they look
It was
ridiculous.
really bad in this one.
It was so bad. Like, there's like, everyone makes fun of J.J. Abrams and his obsession with lens flare. You look at these Cylons and there's like 6 different points of light reflecting off these star filter moments on each individual Cylon, and that is, it kind of undercuts the gravitas of these what should be intimidating Cylons.
You know, and just while you're on the star filter and the way they shoot the Cylons, because when we get to the point with the Cylons, I have some things about them in this episode and how they behave and such, but just the shooting, not just the star filter, but they couldn't even get the exposure right. Like, there's parts of it where they were trying to make it look like dark and sinister, and they just underexposed the whole thing, and all you see is just sort of blackness with like these bits of light from the star filters, but you're like, I think there's some Cylons there, but it's just black.
Yes.
And it wasn't because it was supposed to be they were hiding or something. It's just literally they had the camera closed down too much.
Yes.
All
So,
right. So
now we're through this first fight. Shields is blown up. Bo is blown up. Kree
Wait,
gets forced down.
before you move on those, I want to give a shout out when you're talking about the show don't tell. Absolutely. And something I was thinking about this week having to do with some curricular stuff is about adaptations. And one of my all-time favorites in terms of, I really like the source material and I like the movies, but also just the way they adapted it, is the Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah.
And I love the books. The books are fantastic. The movies, I
Really?
think, are also fantastic. But the thing that is so smart about that is if you read the books, we are at almost none of the important events. Almost every battle, important scene or something is somebody later on telling somebody
Talking
else,
about
like,
it.
oh, I was, it's largely a book about storytelling and them telling each other this stuff. And it works perfectly fine in the book. Can you imagine watching the movie if they hadn't made this change and said, hey, let's show all this stuff? And instead it's like, every scene is just Gandalf, sitting in somebody's chair, telling them this epic tale of all this. And totally agree with you. That is what happened here. There was apparently very exciting events with some drama to them. And Adama's suspicious that it seemed like the Cylons gave up too easily. I'm like, wouldn't that have been a great suspenseful moment to see in the midst of this battle? And it seems like maybe the Cylons are winning and then give up. Wait, what does that mean? And instead we just get it told to us while they're standing in the bridge talking to each other.
The very spacious bridge. I'm just going to drop in my 2 bits on the Lord of the Rings and to a lesser extent the Game of Thrones. I haven't watched all of the Game of Thrones series. That I really enjoyed, and I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I have tried to read The Hobbit so many times, and I'm like 3 chapters in, and I'm like, I cannot do this. And I don't really like Martin's writing, George R.R. Martin's writing very much either. I feel like it's way too bloated. But the adaptations of both of those, I think, are excellent. Just thought I'd throw in my 2 bits.
Yeah. So I will say, if you haven't tried, and it might just not be your style of writing, which is fine. If you haven't tried the actual Lord of the Rings, that's just written very differently than The Hobbit. The Hobbit is written more like a kid's book, and the Lord of the Rings is written pretty differently. That doesn't mean you're going to like it, but it is a different style of writing.
But didn't Martin take a lot after him? And I don't really like Martin's writing.
So look, I mean, Lord of the Rings is a long read. There's a lot in there that doesn't make it into the movie. And there's a lot of detail and stuff that is extraneous to the plot, because I think part of it is that book is not just about the plot. It's about creating this world and the storytelling of it and all that, blah, blah, blah. I'll say that the Game of Thrones, I actually quite enjoyed reading the books, although I agree with you, they were very bloated and long, but I liked following and getting all the detail of the characters and stuff. So I was reading through those, but they're very dense. There's like a cajillion characters. And I got like 4.5 books through, And then my kids were born. And so I had to I just didn't have time or mental energy to read for a year, and came back and tried to pick up where I left off. I'm like, I don't remember who any of these people are. I'm going to have to start over. I don't have time to start over 5 books.
Right.
So I have not got back to it. It's on my bucket list sometime, but then I'm like, well, maybe I should just wait till all the books are done, which is apparently going to be in
never
2,300 or something like that.
A couple of things about that. I did the same thing. I think I went about 2.5 books in, and I was like, you know what? And I did the same with the series, and I'm like, I'm going to wait until I get through the 3rd book before I watch the 3rd season. And I know that they diverge at a certain point too, but the same thing happened to me. I fell off of the series and I fell off the books. He did not do himself any favors though if you're going to have that many characters, can you not name them Tyrion and Tywin? Can you name them more distinctly than names like that, where I'm going to be like, wait, which one's the son? Which one's the father? Screw you for stuff like that.
I'll
that
go
annoys
you one
me.
better. Did you ever read the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, the books?
Yeah. Not all of them, but I think I read the first 2. Are there only 2?
How can you read the first 2 and then stop? Because the second one ends on a cliffhanger, going
probably
into
the
third
same
one.
reason that I stopped halfway through the 3rd book of the
I think
Fire
those are
of Ice.
fantastic. It's actually to me a really interesting book series, because I read the first one and everyone was gushing about it, and I was like, that was fine. It was an okay thriller, and it also seemed sort of closed. It didn't seem like there was a continuation.
Okay, maybe I didn't read the second one then.
Okay, and then books 2 and 3 build off the events from the first one, but in a very different and much more interesting direction, and I thought were absolutely fantastic. So I'd recommend that whole series. But something my wife and I both complained about is there's 15 people in the book named Erickson, and all their phones are Sony Ericssons, and they just keep... So Ericsson, can you get your Ericsson? I think Ericsson has it. And I'm like, is there only one name in Sweden? Come on, people.
Can we get a Nokia up in here?
And it to the point where it was really hard at some points to tell what was going on, or even if they were talking about a phone or a person. And I'm like, I really like this story. I appreciate the writer. This seems like an easy fix that some editor should have been like, hey, can this person have a different name?
Can we name someone? Yes. Yeah, totally agree. One other thing about this scene with Adama when he's explaining everything.
Oh, are we still talking about Battlestar? I lost track.
Yeah, I guess so. Adama has a very uncanny way of just knowing things that are happening, and I don't really know if I like it or hate it at this point, because he's just like, well, they're clearly trying to funnel us into this little area or whatever. And I feel like if this was in the reboot and this was Edward James Olmos, he'd be like, I don't understand what's going on. What are they playing at? I feel like there's a lot more omniscience of this portrayal of Adama than there should be, maybe.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of it. I will say, of all the things in this show that can and sometimes do bug me, that one doesn't. I kind of just buy that he's wise commander who, he understands 3 levels deeper the strategy, and he knows maybe, we don't know, because we didn't see the battle, but I could see him knowing that, okay, we've had 10 skirmishes with them, and each time it seems like they have the upper hand and kind of back off when I wouldn't expect they would. And I have decades of military experience fighting the Cylons to kind of know how they think. And so I know they're doing something, and he's putting all that evidence together and coming up with his theory, which turns out to be usually right because he understands how they think.
Yeah, if it was wrong every once in a while, I would appreciate if it was wrong, or at least not exactly what it is, because it's exactly what it is again.
Well, let's also remember that this is being done for kids. I think that's become more and more apparent as we go through these episodes. And I'm not saying that's a criticism, but Derek pointed that out, and I think we've seen that. And they're getting really explicit about just spelling some stuff out. And so you get Adama saying, here's the map. They're funneling us right here to this. And then we get the Cylon saying, we're funneling them to right here.
Right.
And that's stuff that in the reboot would have been done more interestingly, subtly. Adama would maybe have the sense something is wrong, but doesn't know what they're doing. But also... that's a series that's designed for people watching serious drama at a higher level of plot details, intelligence, and strategy and stuff. So I'll say that didn't usually bother me.
Did you also think it was hilarious in the scene when Adama's like, we got to pull together a task force. We need people that are capable of Arctic survival, demolition, and also, by the way, they have to be able to be space warriors. He puts together this ridiculous, if you're shopping for something and you started just adding filters, you would get down to 0 matches with all the qualifications that the strike force, because they want to send someone down to blow up the gun. And it's reminded me of Armageddon when it's what's easier? Should we teach astronauts how to drill, or should we teach these oil riggers how to go to space and land on a comet? So, or asteroid, I guess, in that one. Comet was Deep Impact, I think. But it made me laugh so hard when he's like, okay, here's what we need to do. And they have not only so many people that are qualified for this, but they just so happen to all be convicts.
Well, it seemed like
I thought that was a
a
very
bunch
funny
of them
moment.
were convicts from like the same group, and the issue was they had raided Cylon bases on like ice planets before, so it was like by virtue.
Fair
of being
enough.
But it was very funny when he lists off the stuff. I also like that they have this computer that has records on everybody in the entire fleet and like all their skill set. Like, oh yes, this person does have Arctic survival training and stuff. Like, did they always have this information on everybody? Like when you were one of the survivors, did they go around and fill out a questionnaire? Have you ever been stuck in the Arctic? Have you done demolition? Like, it was such weird stuff to have that detailed info on. The thing this reminded me of was not Armageddon, although that's a good reference, was Suicide Squad.
Okay, that I haven't seen.
You
I also
definitely
mentioned
should
Dirty
not
Dozen.
see it. It is
Dirty
horrible.
Dozen. Of course not. You're already forcing me to see Justice League next week, so
If you
You're on
want
thin
Justice
ice,
League to
buddy.
seem really good, go ahead and watch Suicide Squad first. It is,
Nope.
if you think of all the problems we've had with Battlestar, the things we haven't liked, where the plot doesn't make any sense and nothing follows from another, put all that together with a bigger budget and an even more nonsensical plot, and you start to get an approximation of Suicide Squad. Anywho, the idea of it, and it's something in the comics before the movie, of course, is like, oh, we have this task that needs to be done. Now, the difference there is they're basically like, we need people who we totally don't care about if they get killed doing it, so let's round up all these criminals. In this case, they weren't specifically looking for criminals. They were looking for people with this skill set. But once they had that group together, I'm like, oh, this is Suicide Squad. We're just going to send them in with their special tasks to do their things, and there's going to be are they going to follow and work for the good of the group, or are they going to rebel and try to go off and do their own thing because they're criminals? Like, we've seen that before.
yes, we've seen it.
It also reminded me a little bit of a much better movie, which is The Rock, when they need the inside information on Alcatraz and they have to get Sean Connery. It comes up later, but there was one part that actually reminded me very much of this, where he's kind of debating whether or not to go along with them and do it. Kind of him weighing his options and the value of each, and this reminded me very much of that. And I love that movie. I think that remains Michael Bay's best movie by a long shot.
Yes, I was a biochemistry major at the time that movie came out, or I was close to being a biochemistry major at the time, and I thought that was the coolest movie ever, and that movie holds up and is fantastic.
It is. Kids, if you haven't seen it, go see The Rock.
Yeah, go see The Rock. And of course, it also reminds me of The Dirty Dozen. And very recently, this reminds me of, this is going to be a spoiler for an episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian that came out a few weeks back. So skip ahead about 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this. When they break Bill Burr's character out of jail to go help them on that planet. And then they have that, I love Bill Burr. They have that really cool moment at the end, though, where they're like, well, too bad you got killed in the explosion of this facility or wherever. He's like, what are you guys talking about? You guys serious? He's like, and he starts like slowly walking away. He's like, is it cool? I'm just going to walk away. Like, I love how Bill Burr acts it, but like, there's that, yeah, hey. And the same thing happens at the end of The Rock, right? That they're like, Sean Connery's character just got vaporized. He's like, I never seen, he's like,
can
vaporized,
a body do that?
huh?
Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was great. Before we go into this task force, when Kree's speeder gets shot down on the ice planet, again, I'm going to lean into my Star Wars actually ripped off Battlestar Galactica, because not only does it look like an air speeder on Hoth, but it crashes almost in exactly the same way that Luke's does when he's fighting the walkers on Hoth.
I literally have exactly the same note, and I'm like, this must have been good practice for the effects team to go do the same shot in Hoth. Yeah. It's really, Mike, I know you've been pushing the Lucas is ripping off Battlestar narrative.
It's conspiracy.
It's really hard to not watch some of these and at least see an influence or see him saying like, oh, that was a cool idea for something.
And the canopy opens, I mean, not that there's a ton of ways for those canopies to open, but the canopy opens and looks almost exactly the way it does when Luke gets out on Hoth and goes to the underside of the walker. It's crazy how many things I'm noticing that I feel like are that Star Wars stole from them.
Well, and there was even the parts, this is not nearly as identical as that was, because that was basically the same exact set of shots and actions.
Yeah.
But the part where the Cylon patrol is coming over and shooting at their shuttle after it's crashed, and Starbuck is in the front trying to get the communicator or something. I'm like, this is like Luke trying to get Dax out right before the AT-AT walks on them.
Yeah, he's trying to get the grappling hook to get to the... Yeah, totally.
I, at this point, am not going to be super surprised if in part 2 of this, we see the Cylons in giant 4-legged walkers over the ice planet.
Yes. Well, and too, the quad guns on the Millennium Falcon were very similar, and we haven't gotten to... Or maybe... No, we haven't gotten to that yet. On the shuttle that the criminals take down, I think is the one that had the quad guns on it that, like, when Luke and Han in, I guess, New Hope had come out at this point, they go to, like, the 2 quad guns on the Millennium Falcon and are shooting them. There's a very Millennium Falcon looking gun in this episode. I think it was on the shuttle that they take to
Snow Ram or whatever, the vehicle, because it has like the turret at the top that they get onto.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a ripoff of A New Hope, but then also it seemed like then Star Wars again kind of ripped off a combination of that and itself, I guess, in Empire Strikes Back with do you remember those like sort of satellite dish style lasers they had at the Hoth battle? It reminded me a little bit of that. Also, given how much we've talked about lately, Lucas or Star Wars ripping this off, I think we have to say that this is a Death Star. They're like, what? This gun that can take out a whole ship with one pulse blast? I mean, and really, it's
for sure.
It's the Force Awakens, the Star Killer base. Like, it's this planet with this big gun built into it, and we need to send a task force down to disable it.
Yep.
I know A Force Awakens basically just remade A New Hope with different names, but they're definitely getting their fair share of ripping off Battlestar in there as well.
For sure. So there's a cool moment now next, and really I like this as a vehicle for Benedict and Starbuck. He sneaks into this server room, I guess, for lack of a better word, to change the program to get picked for this mission. So now we've seen back-to-back episodes where Starbuck is sort of turning into the hero that I think everyone remembers him as. And he gets himself on this task force with these people that have this Arctic training and all that stuff. And there's one good moment with the guy that's in there, and Starbuck is basically trying to like get him out of there. And he just stumbles upon this way because Starbuck's like, oh yeah, I was out there with the Viper pilots. And the guy's like, oh, the female Viper pilots? And he's like, and Starbuck, it seemed like he wasn't intending to do that, but then he realized it would be a good opportunity for him to get rid of the guy. He's like, oh yeah, actually there are some females out there. And the guy leaves. Starbuck changes the program to get put on this task force.
Captain Apollo and I were touring the tech levels with the new Viper pilots. I just thought I'd take a look in here.
The female Viper pilots?
I believe they are females. Yes. Look, if you'd like to meet them, I think they're in the armament room.
That's interesting to hear your read of it, because I also very much like that scene. That may have been my favorite scene in this whole episode. But my read was he came in with a plan, knowing what he was going to do, because Starbuck's been so conscious of the female pilots and stuff. When he goes in, he's like, oh yeah, I was touring around the Viper pilots, and he knows exactly what the other guy is thinking, because like the female Starbuck's like, oh yeah, I guess they're like, I thought he totally had a plan there. Even from the moment where he first walks in, he's like, oh yeah, I don't actually understand any of this stuff. I didn't pay attention at the academy, when he knows perfectly well how to break in and change the computing. So it's interesting to hear you had a different read, but I did really like Starbuck being sort of crafty and getting the guy out of there and getting his man into the system.
I'm really, really enjoying the last couple episodes of Starbuck.
While we're in this early part, I can't remember if this is immediately before or after. Maybe it's before, because it's when they're first out. The rookie pilots go down to investigate this flash or whatever they see, which turns out to be the Death Star, or what do they call it? A pulsar beam? We'll just call it Death Star.
A gun on an ice planet. The gun on an ice planet.
So first off, we do get Starbuck getting a little taste of his own medicine. 2 episodes ago, we heard Boomer talking about, or Boomer not wanting to follow orders, and Apollo's like, you've been hanging around with Starbuck too much. And here Starbuck's like giving the orders. He's like, this is a direct order. And the guy's like, no, we're doing our own thing. And it's like, sorry, Starbuck.
Yeah.
But the thing they didn't want him to do was get too close to the planet. And they make multiple comments about they're inside its gravitational pull. Haven't we seen these Vipers go on and off of planets? Like, I didn't know what their concern was.
Isn't that the point of the Vipers?
That they could get out.
Yeah.
What that reminded me of, and it's sort of tangential, other than I was thinking of getting inside the gravitational pull. But as further evidence going back a few episodes ago that I am not the heartless bastard Mike thinks I am.
Hey, you're not the heartless bastard that we have on tape
The
admitting
scene
that you
in
are.
Interstellar, the Chris Nolan film, where they're out in space and they want to go investigate this planet, but it's very close to a black hole. So they know because of relativity, they're going to get time dilation and such. And they go down and they have a little bit of a disaster and get stuck down there longer than they expected. And they finally come back out of the gravity well, and it's been like 30 years have passed. You know, I saw this movie after I already had kids, so it was probably extra poignant, but this was definitely like a tearjerker moment for me. There's this scene where Matthew McConaughey, who is just lost basically 30 years, gets back on the ship and is watching through the video messages that his kids had like sent to them while they're in space, and basically sees his kids grow up, and he missed their entire childhood and adulthood. And they're full-on 40, 50-year-old adults now or whatever. I don't remember exactly how old they are. And just watching him watch them and seeing everything he missed, that is such an amazing scene. I love it. And that was a movie that I thought was really smart in how it plays with gravity and relativity and stuff. And here it just seemed like a random thing, like, don't get too close to the planet. And they're like, why? And the writer's like, crap, we need a reason why. Gravity. Planets have gravity, right? Yeah, don't get too close. Gravity will get you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little weird. So Boomer and Starbuck initially go down to start rounding up the Dirty Dozen and the crew of the Armageddon mission. And at first I was like, oh man, they really missed an opportunity to have Goody Two Shoes Apollo go down there, because there's a great scene in the reboot where that's exactly what happens. Apollo's the Goody Two Shoes. He has to go down, and that's when you first see Richard Hatch come out as the character in the reboot. You know, everyone's jeering and making fun of Apollo. And I was glad to see that Apollo, because then Apollo gets his way onto the mission. Because there's also a great moment, I forget exactly when it comes, when they're like, Starbuck, the computer picked you? Like, but you sneeze when you get like a chill or like you're allergic to like any sort of cold. It was kind of funny. He's like, yeah, I don't know why I would have been picked. It was kind of a neat
Boomer says you
moment
get dizzy
there,
when
too.
your drink's too cold.
Dizzy when your drink's too cold. Thank you. And so Apollo's basically like, someone was screwing with the computer. I demand to be on this mission. And of course, everyone acquiesces to Apollo's request.
I totally missed that
And
scene.
so-
There's a scene where Apollo argues he should be on it.
Well, he basically just says,
I thought he was just like appointed
It was
as
not
the
like a
leader
long
of
scene.
the thing by Adama.
I think he intentionally, though, forced himself onto that, right?
I didn't see that, but I don't know. Maybe I tuned out at that moment. Maybe NBC was playing a commercial when that happened.
That could be. So there's this motley crew of people, and when these criminals kept coming out, I was like, why are they all dressed like Chewbacca? Did you notice that? I don't know if it was because they had been picked for an Arctic mission, but they're all wearing like furs. And I was like, why the hell?
Maybe they don't
Are
have
they
heat
all
on the prison ship? I don't know.
I guess. I also thought it was strange that instead of doing like, here's the dossier on this one, here's the dossier on this one, which is a classic. I think that's what they do in Armageddon, where they're like, here's this guy, here's their rap sheet. But instead, it's like a fashion show. They're like walking the individual criminals out, and they're like looking at them and being like, this guy, this guy, this guy. And then they just like are standing there. And it also reminded me a little bit of the bounty hunter lineup in Empire Strikes Back. Once they're all there, like these badasses just sort of lined up in the ship. Yeah, I said no disintegration.
Yeah, so you're right. There is a classic scene where they're looking at the dossiers, or they're kind of seeing the people come through. And I think a recent example of this would have been the first Guardians of the Galaxy, when they kind of all get arrested and are getting checked into jail. And as they're like doing their mug shots, somebody's like reading through the stuff they've done.
Yeah. Or as they're getting, or to go back, a call back to The Rock, as they're breaking Sean Connery's character, John Mason, out of jail. They're just, the voiceover is just reading his rap sheet.
Artist.
Yeah, exactly. I get up 3 times a night to take a piss. He's not going to hit
That was
the streets.
The great Philip Baker Hall in the secondary role to, I forget the guy's name, who was playing Womack, who was the main.
Womack was the guy from Greatest American Hero.
And he's the chief of staff, I think, in the West Wing. There's one of the guy who gets pulled out, who Womack pulls out of the meeting to debate whether they should bring out Mason, who's Sean Connery.
With the mustache. The one who says he's vaporized?
That's like, this is like beforehand when they're first
okay.
like, we need inside intel. And there's somebody's like, I got an idea. And Womack pulls him out, like, we can't let him out. And that's the guy who says, I get up 3 times a night to take a piss. He's my age. That's the great Philip Baker Hall, who I love and I think doesn't get enough credit for stuff.
Robert Culp is the guy from Greatest American Hero, and the guy who's like, He's the one who argues against him, and he's the one who's like, "You hurt my arm." Like that's that guy. That's the guy from Greatest American Hero. in
Okay,
this one.
so
Sorry.
I have no idea what thread I was on. Where did we get on here? Oh, what I was going to say. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy. You mentioned the scene from The Rock. All the things they're getting in the background. You're right. It was very weird. They pull him out, and I thought it was going to be they pull him out, they read their rap sheet, and then they like let the person know like, hey, here's the plan. Do you want in? And instead it was they pull him out, like put him in front of Boomer and Starbuck to look at them. They like read out their rap sheet. There's no interaction with some of them, and then they just take the person back away. This again felt very much like made for kids. Like, let's make sure everyone's clear who these people are and what they're doing. Although, honestly, I was confused about who most of the convicts were the entire rest of the episode, like which was which and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter. Okay, I was super wrong. It was John Spencer.
John Spencer, that's correct.
The guy from The Rock and from West Wing. The guy from Greatest American Hero is Robert Culp and had nothing to do with that other than sort of looking like the other guy. He was also in LA Law. That's right.
So did you think most of the times in these sort of put together the criminal group to do this thing, there's something offered to them. And I felt like that was the other missing scene from this classic trope is them say like, what's in it for us? And there wasn't even the what's in it for us. Like, well, our fleet's going to get blown up and you live on the fleet. So if you want to stay, like there was no negotiation or anything. It's like, here's these criminals, take them down. Let's do it. And the criminals kind of didn't have any choice. I'm like, what if they just mutiny right away? Cause they never even said they wanted to come along.
Totally. And that's what they did in the reboot. Apollo's like, we're going to commute your sentence or part of your sentences if you help us with this thing. And there was still that tension of will they help or won't they help? But in this one, they didn't offer them. They basically were like, hey, you're part of this. Are you thinking of William Forsythe, by the way, from The Rock? He played Ernest Paxton. He was the one who said
Forsythe is the one with the mustache.
Huh? I've never heard of that.
Philip Baker Hall is only in
he's the one who says
one
vaporize
scene
it.
at the beginning. I just like him a lot.
Sorry,
he's the star of Paul Thomas Anderson's first movie, Hard Eight or Sydney, depending on which title you're going by.
Oh, and he was in Magnolia.
Yes, he's a PTA favorite. But he's almost always a character actor. I think the Sydney movie was like the only one where he was like a lead. And I remember an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson where he was like, "Yeah, I just love him, and he never got a leading role." So I'm like, I'm writing a role for him to be the lead.
He is still alive.
Is he
90? Well, he'll be 90 in September. Yeah. I thought he had just died recently.
But I'm happy to hear he's not.
At least according to IMDb.
Well, why would IMDb lie to us?
Sorry, Mr. Philip Baker Hall, if you are dead.
The other part in that, so they bring them all out, and finally they have like the lineup. I'm like, okay, so now's when they're going to tell them what's going on. And they're like, so what's the mission? And Starbuck's like, the commander will brief you. I'm like, then what was the point of bringing all these people together? Okay, you all stand next to each other now. Go back to your cells. And
they set up like there's like a husband and wife that don't get along. They set up that they're going to kind of fight with each other. And there was a little bit of that actually on the mission. But truthfully, there wasn't a whole lot of depth to those characters being criminals. They could have used it probably a lot more, the fact that they were criminals. So I will agree with you. That was kind of a disappointment in this episode for me. But I'm a huge sucker for Dirty Dozen and Armageddon type missions where it's like, oh, this ragtag group of assholes has to do this really important mission. That gets me, and I love it, and I'm here for it. And I definitely will have liked this episode.
And there's a reason that's a classic trope, because it works. It's like a good story device. I just thought they missed some of the key elements of that trope. For sure. You mentioned the married couple. I had to quote these lines. They like shoot each other a look, and Starbuck's like, "You don't like him?" She's like, "I'm married to him." There's this long pause, and she's like, "And no, I don't like him."
Yes, it was great. And looks-wise, they cast that criminal group very, very well. There's like a scary looking guy. I thought that they were kind of badass looking. It was a kind of a neat, other than they were dressed like Chewbacca.
I would agree with you on that, although I was thinking of the thing you mentioned in our last episode about how in the 70s there were just like 10 different types of people and everyone looked the same. I'm like, these people all look the same. And then also, and this is poor filmmaking, you have to do better than this, or TV making, whatever. Then the whole second half of this episode, they're in these big bulky coats with hoods pulled over them and these masks on. So these people who already looked all the same now are like impossible to distinguish who's who. Yet there were like plot points about which one was doing what and what the other one was doing. I'm like, I literally have no idea
Yes.
who any of these people are at this point. It's just a bunch of coats.
I have a note later on. So we're going to see some clones later on. And my note wasn't I just talking about last episode how there's only 4 looks of people in the 70s? And what's funny is one of the clones at the end reminded me, we didn't get to this because it was second season of Twilight Zone, but there was The Howling Man was a really cool kind of classic episode of the Twilight Zone. And one of the clones, the guy clone who made this gun that we'll find out later on, looks a lot like the actor from The Howling Man. I didn't even bother looking up if it's the same person. I will do that during the break because we went way past our break time. Let's take a quick break now, Mark, and we'll get back to discussing this episode.
We are all living for the promise of freedom, and we're all threatened by a similar death.
Perhaps it was the chains that made the difference.
Am I in full command?
Of the demolition unit? Yes. Of the expedition? No. The officer in full command will be Captain Apollo. And we've picked up Cylon battle stars approaching on the long-range scan. They should reach our position in 800 or 900 centons. Now, whether the pulsar is destroyed or not, this fleet will move in exactly 700 centons. Good luck to all of us.
Okay, we are back, and that was definitely not the actor from The Howling Man. I did the research during the break, and we also started talking during the break about security lapses, because in the most predictable thing ever, Boxey and Muffet end up on this ship with these convicts and with his dad that crashes on this planet, essentially.
If you did not see that coming, you have never seen television before.
Right. I will say we have sort of lamented the chain of command on the Battlestar, and the criminals seem to have the most concern about chain of command, because the one guy's like, well, who's in charge? And he's like, you're in charge of like the
Demolition.
whatever, blowing up the thing, demolition. But Apollo is in charge of the whole mission. And like now suddenly we care about rank.
Well, when they were busy figuring that out, because I'm sure that took them a lot of time, and they had to do a joint meeting of every single officer on Galactica, which left the shuttle completely unguarded so Boxey and Muffet could walk right onto it. Which is not the first
That was
lack
annoying.
of security we've seen in the ships, where basically it seems anyone who wants to just take a Viper can just hop on one and take it. Anyone who wants to wander onto the bridge and just start doing stuff on computers is welcome to. This is not exactly a tightly run ship Adama's got here.
Before we even get down to the planet stuff, just one quick little note. There's a quick scene where there's a guy packing up Kree's stuff like he's dead, and Starbuck gets really mad at him, and he's like, well, the Colonel told me to. Why did Colonel Ty tell him to immediately start packing up? First of all, I see your Battlestar interior, and it is massive. There's no reason to be packing that guy's stuff up for somebody else. I thought that was kind of a weird
Well, and they
scene.
have a limited number of humans. This is all of humanity. It's not like, well, we need this bed for the next person who comes in here. Like, nobody else is coming.
Right, and two other ones just died, so go pack up their stuff first. The ones that you are sure are dead, go pack their stuff up first. It was obviously to give Benedict an opportunity to be like, he's not dead yet, and to keep the hope, which I did appreciate, but I thought it was weird that Colonel Ty, who frankly is less of a military bot than Adama, maybe there's other colonels, but he said the colonel told me to do it. I assume that's Ty.
He's the XO.
Yeah. It was just a little bit weird. I
Yeah,
thought. Anyhow.
agreed. And well, while we're talking about this bit on Starbuck, and this might be the sort of, from our discussion, sounds like the most kind of fundamental thing we disagreed on with this episode. We talked in the last couple about Apollo and Starbuck kind of finally being distinguished and being different characters, and the writers figuring out what to do with them, the actors figuring out how to play them. And we had 2 episodes we liked quite a bit. One that was Apollo-centric in The Lost Warrior, and one that was Starbuck-centric in The Long Patrol. And I think what bothered me about this,
our favorite episode to this
it was.
point.
We gave
Sorry.
it.
The Lost
we gave
Patrol
it
was
5
our highest
stars,
rank
yeah.
to this point. Sorry.
And on the Battlestar scale, to be clear, we gave it 5 stars.
That's a 5 Battlestar scale.
5 battles
Why have we been
out of a
doing that?
star.
I give it 5 Battlestars.
We should give it 5 battle stars. We'll
Yes.
go. We're gonna retcon
Have you not
that.
been doing a little Battlestar icon?
The All the Wrong Friends movie that I did, when that came out, I looked to see where it was reviewed. It was most reviewed on like horror film site, and there was one, I can't think of what it was called. I should look it up. That like every movie, it gave a rating out of 5, but it was never stars. It was like something from that movie,
Yeah,
4.5 dead bodies, 3, I don't know, imposters, whatever it was. Anyway,
Yeah.
I really liked what they were doing with those. I really thought in the last episode we finally got a handle on Starbuck. And as you mentioned repeatedly, and I agree with, Benedict kind of really figured out that character. Now, I know people can be complex. We all have different motivations and act differently at different times. But we
can. Thanks, Mark.
I really felt that they threw away some of the progress they had made in this episode where Starbuck basically wasn't doing comedy. The only kind of joke thing we had was Boomer saying you get dizzy when your drink's too cold, and a little bit with him in the computer lab trying to get the guy out. But that was like a planned out ploy. It was almost like him playing a character. And instead we get Starbuck really concerned about this cadet who is under his watch. I understand it's a good thing for our characters to be sympathetic and want to do the right thing, and I admire Starbuck for that, but I felt like it also took a step back from what they had finally been getting right about Starbuck. Was, we mentioned specifically last episode, it's like it's all about Starbuck. When he thinks they've lost the Battlestar and everything, he doesn't even ask about that or care about anything. He's like, hey, we can get rich off this ambrosia. And then suddenly they take this hard left turn where it's like this one cadet he suddenly feels super responsible for and completely changes all his behavior. And I think if we had built a few more episodes with Starbuck as he was, and then see there's this deeper layer, I might have been more into it. But it felt to me like I finally was getting Starbuck, and now they've changed to something else that really felt like Apollo. And one of the things I mentioned at the end of last episode was I loved that I finally could tell Starbuck and Apollo apart by what they were doing. And this is one, if you just told me a cadet gets kidnapped, one of the supervising Viper pilots really gets obsessed about it and is going to kind of risk it all to go and get him out. I'm like, oh yeah, that seems exactly like what Apollo would do. And it seems like now we've got Starbuck and Apollo sort of merged into the same person again. So that was what I didn't like. Your counter argument.
I'm going to play devil's advocate from the acting perspective. Don't you think that lends more gravitas to the fact that Starbuck, this lighter-hearted character, is carrying this so heavily? I thought that actually meant more that he was. And I get that, yeah, it's a little bit of a tonal shift, but if it's an intentional tonal shift, I mean, like, I'm usually the jokey, happy, fun guy. So like when something's wrong, Kelsey can see right off the bat, you know, like if I'm quiet or if I'm brooding or whatever. So yeah, you're right that maybe they didn't have enough of a baseline laid for him to this point. Although, you know, this is episode 8 or whatever we're on, 8, I guess. So
do we even know anymore?
You know, and not that he's always played it exactly that way, but I thought it carried. I mean, Apollo broods about everything except for the death of his wife, which he took like 2 seconds to do. But like Starbuck, I think it lent more of a highlight on the fact that he was so torn up about this Kree being missing because it was under his watch. And as far as we've seen, this is kind of the first one. I mean, he had the successful mission with the Lady Viper pilots, but as far as we've seen, this is kind of his first loss.
Although he's been captured himself multiple
concerned
times.
About the other two. True. And he doesn't seem as torn up about the other two, but I think that's why, I think because of the fact that he lost the other two, that he has to cling to the hope that he didn't lose his whole flight crew.
Okay, so maybe we're not as far apart as it would seem, because I totally agree with you, both from the acting and the writing perspective. I think that could add gravitas. The problem for me is these characters have been so all over the map, and now it's like, here's yet another version of Starbuck, and so I'm like, I don't feel where this came in the series, that this was the happy-go-lucky character who, you know, suddenly this event hits him really hard. I was like, okay, now Starbuck is a serious character, because they haven't been able to settle on anything. If they had settled for a while and then changed, that would help. And the other thing with the setup is, even in this episode itself, you could imagine a version that starts out with Starbuck joking around with one of the cadets and they're like, hey, we're going out on this mission. It's like Starbuck's pet cadet. And he's like, hey, why don't you come along? And Apollo's like, he's not ready yet. And Starbuck's like, sure, he'll be fine. And then that's the guy who gets captured, and Starbuck really feels a sense of responsibility for that.
Feels responsible.
We don't have that set up either. We didn't even know that he was specific, like that was Starbuck's person he was commanding or particularly responsible for. And that was the stuff where, even though this is an ongoing issue with Battlestar, the setup wasn't there for the right payoff. And in fairness, like, look, this was actually much less egregious than some stuff from earlier episodes, but it felt like they had really been on an upward trajectory. And this one, I felt they took a step back.
And I will say, juxtaposed against how amazingly Katie Sackhoff played Starbuck, because even though she was kind of like the lighthearted comedy relief character, there was clearly always a dark side
Yeah.
of that character, and she did such a good job playing it that it was okay when it came out. She was always going to be rebellious. She was always going to give Ty grief. She was going to lighten the mood and be the character that was sort of a release, but at the same time, if she snaps, she's going to snap
Yeah, and you
hard.
felt that from the get-go, and that was a better written
Yes.
and better acted character, frankly. Although, in Dirk
Yeah, for
Benedict's
sure.
defense, she had more to work with in terms of what the material was she was given. Getting it a level beyond Benedict, just also think of the overall tone of the show. I mean, last episode was essentially a sitcom.
Yeah, true.
And then we go to this where there was almost no levity. It's all very dark, very intense. And again, that could be done well, but it was... I go back to, I feel like the show was kind of finally finding its way, and now it's like lost its way again, and again is trying to do too many different things or not sure what it wants to be.
It's kind of like this podcast.
This is not
So
a politics podcast.
We're down on the planet. We're crashed. Why wasn't everyone buckled up on that shuttle, by the way? Because the bodies are just thrown everywhere on that shuttle. A couple people actually were buckled up, but then when they wake up, everyone's just sort of all over the place.
I had to go back and rewatch. There's like one quick shot of somebody in a chair not buckled and just like flies across the whole ship.
Yes, I saw
But
that.
I went back
Yes.
and rewatched it because I was like, I think he jumped. And I went and watched him like, yep, he just like jumps himself across the room.
Yes. So, they've crash landed on this planet. There are Cylons all around, and the planet, they're trying not to freeze to death, essentially. And they've got their rebreathers or whatever, their breathing apparatus. And I haven't noticed this in the past. Maybe you've noticed this. Have the Cylons been carrying swords this whole time?
I don't think so, although they carry their guns kind of weird, like upright like their swords or something.
They have swords on their waists.
I hadn't
in
noticed that at
scabbards.
all.
As they're walking past the ship, the crashed ship, there's swords. They're all carrying swords, which
What
I thought
are they
was
supposed to do
hilarious.
with swords and a laser? It's
I don't
literally
know.
the classic, you brought a knife to a gunfight. You brought a sword to a laser
Yes.
gun battle. So can we talk about the Cylons for a minute? Because there's a lot of Cylons.
Sure,
in this
absolutely. That's
episode.
perfect. Yeah. Lot of star
A lot
filters.
of star filters. A lot of very slow talking. Like I love this, like order the patrol to intercept.
Yes.
I at one point actually wrote down, it's amazing they got anything done as an empire operating at these speeds, because literally for one of them to tell somebody to fire the giant laser was like 6 levels of chain of command, which apparently is much clearer than it is on Galactica, where nobody knows who's in charge.
I was going to say the same.
And also they speak as if they've like been slowed down by a factor of 10. I'm like, all you have to do is get in a battle with the Cylons, and if you can kill all of them in the first hour, they won't have finished uttering the first command at that point.
Agreed.
This is a 2-part episode. I don't know what's coming in part 2, but from what I've seen in part 1, if they just had the
a
Cylons
gun
speak
on
at a
an ice
normal
planet.
speed, it would be a 1-parter. That literally slowed it down by half an hour.
Entry tracks. How many? 2. Order the patrol to intercept. Engage the pulsar.
If we're on the technology bent, this is a decent enough segue to, I think I have finally figured out that Muffet is just a smaller person walking on their feet and hands, like maybe with stilts for their arms to make their arms a little bit longer. I think that's what that
I think you're right.
character
And the
design is.
stilts with the hands. I'm thinking of in the play version of The Lion King, like how they do some of the animals.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
probably Muffet.
Or the Wheelers from Return to Oz.
Yeah, or the God, we can't think of what.
I'm just gonna drop
what's
a bunch
the
of
other- what's the
references,
other
so you have to
Muppety thing? Is it the Dark Crystal?
Dark Crystal.
Has something
Yeah.
like that. That's like something. On
Oh,
all
yeah. I
fours
think
that's
so
a
too.
person in costume.
I'm just going to try and keep dropping references so you have to deal with them in the show notes. Actually, I'm going to have to deal with them in the show notes.
Show note. Mike drops a bunch of references. You can find the links.
Oh, by the way, when they landed on this planet, the skybox, like the back horizon, was a very, very bad painting. I don't know if you noticed it.
I did, but at this point, the effects generally have been good enough. I'm willing to forgive their. Although it does always seem to be the like matte paintings in the background is where they cannot figure out how to do it right.
Yeah, no one can
They
do
did
it.
have some nice sound design.
Even Star
on
Wars.
the ice planet, like the just sort of howling wind and the sense of environment. Like I actually felt they built a sort of good hostile world there in terms of the sound.
I'm going to piggyback on that. I was also impressed with the number and quality of the sets.
Yes.
Like, other than me always making fun of the fact that these ships are absolutely massive with huge headspace.
Which the shuttle
but
was
they had
as
a really
well.
cool
Did
ice
you
skate.
notice that?
It was massive. It was they're like moving around each other. I was like, this is crazy. But like they had a really cool like ice cave. I thought the set design was interesting.
Yeah, I actually, the part towards the end where they're going through like the ravines under the ice sheet, I'm like, they're really finding a lot of good. They actually did better than either Hoth. Or what's the God, now I'm going to bring up The Last Jedi. I don't want to talk about the quality of the movie, but what's the planet they're on at the end that has like the salt planet? Yeah, both of those were just basically these white atmospheres. And neither of those Star Wars movies, I thought, actually found as much variety in sort of just a white-covered planet as this did. They found a lot of different ways to shoot it, a lot of different looks to it. I agree with you. That was cool.
Crate.
This felt big. This felt big budget.
C-R-A-I-T. Crate. Sorry.
Okay.
C-R-A-I-T was that planet. Yeah, it did. There was a lot spent on this one, maybe because it's another two-parter that they basically are budgeting almost more like it's a movie.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes for kind of when they land and they've just crashed and they're getting out of the thing and the Cylon patrol ship comes by. Once again, I do not understand how the Cylons have had any success in battle given how incompetent they are. It's literally a giant shuttle sitting there. It can't move. It can't go anywhere. The Cylons on the planet that this ship is always on, like it should know its terrain, and like comes flying by, shoots its lasers and misses by like several hundred yards. And I'm like, maybe you should just like get out and hit them with a stick or something if this is as well as you can aim your lasers. And it takes several passes to actually kind of get back. And it never actually blows up the shuttle because when the Cylon walking patrol comes by later, the shuttle's still totally intact.
And aren't they in it? They didn't move to a different... I got very confused at one point. I'm like, aren't they in the shuttle that these Cylons are walking right past?
No, they moved somewhere else. They got... because they were...
Is that when they got rescued?
In like the... What do they ever call it? The snow ram, the driving vehicle, and then they get rescued by the village people.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, I forgot that they got into the ATV or whatever.
And there's a very weird argument about like who has to ride on top and man the gunner's seat, apparently because it's cold. And there's some fist fight that breaks out up there, and then somebody shoots somebody. Yeah. And again, I have no idea who these people were. I don't know if one of them was one of the convicts and one was an officer or what.
Also, yeah, where did the one convict gets a blaster? Because like they finally realized that they're like, hey, the point of using these characters, of making these characters criminals, was so we'd have that added level of tension that maybe they're not going to do the mission, maybe they're just going to run away, do whatever. Right. And one guy steals a blaster from, I don't know who.
I think he stole it from
another
somebody
officer
who died in the crash. Like there's one body that like kind of covered up.
But like an officer, I would assume.
I assume so.
Okay. So they get there. I don't remember even how the second vehicle crashes. Is that what gets shot by the Cylons?
Yeah,
anyhow,
well, so they had actually a little bit of a ploy. First off, their plan apparently was, hey, last time we flew some ships down here, that giant laser shot them out of the sky. Let's fly a couple ships down here to go take out the giant laser. Not surprisingly, they get shot at. But they did kind of have a good plan, such as it was, that there was like a Viper escorting them, and the Viper like sort of flew off in a different direction to lead off the Cylons so the shuttle could get through, which sort of worked, but the shuttle got shot down anyway. I don't know. This did not seem like a very well thought out plan. It reminded me a little bit of, remember a couple episodes when Apollo was lost and Starbuck's like, I got a plan for how we're going to rescue him. And his plan was, let's get in Vipers and fly around. Like,
yeah, let's find him. Yeah, let's try and find him. And surprisingly, the great Adama did not see that this was going to happen despite all of his military brilliance. So essentially they get saved by this guy who's a clone. It's this guy that's a clone and this woman who's a clone in this group of clones. And I thought, Mark, that the guy had made... Well, at least the Wikipedia entry says that the guy is the one that made the... Oh, it is the guy that made the laser because they start yelling at him. Why would you be an agent for the Cylons?
No, because he tells them about some doctor, somebody who made the laser, who made
Dr.
them.
Ravachol.
They're all clones. And they're like, why would he do that? And the guy's like, well, they let him keep experimenting, and the place is full of Cylons. They'd kill him otherwise.
Their father creator is what they call him. So you're right. He's the Thetas are because Apollo calls them clones, and then the woman says that they prefer to be called Theta class life forms. So you're right. The Dr. Ravachol made them and made the laser because it essentially was the Balthar way of not getting killed by the Cylons was to adopt them. Unlike Balthar, though, he didn't immediately revel. What the fuck is Balthar's motivation? It's driving me insane.
So we had a conversation at one point several episodes ago where we were arguing about whether Baltar was complex or just the writers were confused about what he was doing. And I am firmly in the confused camp at this point. I have no idea what his plan is.
Because there is it's totally nonsensical. Now it seems like he legit wants to wipe out humanity.
Well, and the end was like him rubbing his fingers together in a Mr. Burns style, like, now, what do you say? Like, Adama is about to see what happens. Excellent.
Yeah. Why? Like, maybe he got picked on in grade school by Adama. He's steepling his fingers together in a chair that is absurdly too big for him. He sits there like a kid. Like, his knees don't bend at the end of the chair, so he's sitting there in this massive chair. It's ridiculous looking. And Baltar, I can't believe they made such a great character that James Callis portrayed in the reboot based on this character, because this character is ridiculous and frankly I think pointless, because like he really hasn't, I mean, I guess he sort of betrayed him the one time, but like why couldn't he just be another Cylon? There's no like, he's not infiltrating. And like, honestly, if he ever flew back to the Battlestar, he's like, oh my God, I finally got out of there. No, they'd airlock him. There's no way they would believe him at this point.
Totally agree. And you raise a really good question about why is he even in this? The only thing I could think of is that we've talked about how the Cylons all look the same, all sound the same, and it's hard to get much emotion or anything. And I think they wanted like a human face on the villain so we can see them scheming or whatever's going on behind. But then you have to have a scheme.
Yes. And some motivation would be nice.
Yeah. Very, very weird, very nonsensical. We did get the first time we saw his throne room from the outside. Like there's a shot with Lucifer, like the door's open and he comes in. And I had always perhaps generously hypothesized that there's some other screen or computer or something in there that he's working on when people aren't there, getting an audience with him or whatever. And we see the whole room.
How would he know how to work a Cylon computer?
How would anyone know how to do anything, right? Like,
yes.
But I had sort of thought, like, he can't just sit in there on that throne all day waiting for somebody to come in and tell him something. And we saw the whole room, and it's a giant empty room. There's nothing within 20 feet of his pillar. And he is just sitting there facing backwards so he can turn his chair around, make his comment, once every 8 hours when Lucifer comes in to report. Lucifer does have a bit of a character to him. Remember, he tried to run a coup
more
earlier.
Than Baltar. Yeah.
Although we don't know what happened with his coup because it apparently worked and then he was back in his normal position with no consequences. But there's this thing where Gaia says, I bet they're doing this. And Lucifer's like, you are correct. Of course. And it was like this very sarcastic.
You are correct. Of course.
Yeah, Lucifer is a way better character. So ridiculous. I just had to point out that Baltar could be getting better and better as a character. He's getting worse and worse because he's getting more and more one note, and it's terrible. I made this note right before this happened. I wrote in my notes, so that they're basically trying to escape, avoid Cylon patrols on this ice planet, and they end up in this ice cave. And I was like, if I were Apollo, I would tell Boxy, you're leaving that robot behind because that robot is going to screw us. Sure enough, they're in this ice cave and there's a Cylon. By the way, the longest Cylon patrol ever. It's like 30 Cylons are walking overhead. And of course, Boxy makes this little noise, and then we'll have to tune in next week. So we've got the Cylons do hear it, so we don't know if they're going to get captured. We already know one of the criminals has a laser pistol, and he's waiting for the right opportunity to overthrow them. And then we don't know, Baltar is just an evil person and also wants to kill Adama for some reason now.
I'll reference Lord of the Rings again, the movies this time. The scene was virtually identical to the part where Frodo and Sam are at the main gates of Mordor and they accidentally dislodge a little bit of rocks and there's this long line of warriors walking by and one of them hears it and pulls out of line and stops and looks around. It was the same scene where all the other Cylons had gone by. This one stops, looks around. We'll have to tune in next week to see what happens to it. Totally with you. And forget leaving the robot behind. Why didn't Boxy and Moffat both stay in the shelter? Why do they have to go on the mission?
This mission.
He's a stowaway. You have a safe place for him to stay. He's a kid. Maybe leave him there instead of, hey, Boxy, you want to come infiltrate the Cylon village? Which was the other thing when the guy's like, we'll guide the rest of your party to the village. I was like, wait, they have a whole village of people? And then we find out, no, it's a Cylon village. And I was like, Cylons have villages? I just sort of assume they
just
plug themselves back in and stand there.
Yeah, exactly. They stand in a closet.
Or what were Another Mandalorian spoiler, but I won't talk about any plot stuff. You remember those like the dark robots or whatever they're like, big evil,
dark stormtroopers,
and they're just sort of like plugged into the wall until they need to use them. That's how I imagine. Yeah,
those things are scary.
I don't know. I will say one more Star Wars reference that I don't think was an intentional ripoff, but when they're walking around following the clone guy and they all have their coats on, Boxy looks like a little Jawa because the coat is too big and he's got the hood on, the sleeves hanging down and dragging on the ground. He looked like a little Jawa walking along.
Totally. At one point, I had to go back and look at it again when they were originally like trying not to freeze to death because the interior is getting so cold. And I thought it was kind of cool that they're like, well, when it gets to a certain temperature, the air will turn to liquid. I thought it was kind of neat, or a neat reference, but they're panning around all these people wearing like their ventilators or whatever. And I was like, wait a minute, is that how Muffet always looks? Or is he also wearing a ventilator, the little robot? And I had to go back and I think it's just how he always looks. For a moment there, I thought, and that would have been a very funny moment if Muffet had also been wearing a ventilator.
I don't think he was wearing a ventilator, but that would have been funny. Also, for all the people wearing ventilators, I would suggest that you might find them functioning better if they covered your nose and mouth.
Oh, what a topical thing to bring up in this time of pandemic, Mark. It's almost like people don't understand how to wear masks and ventilators. No, totally agree.
I don't have a whole lot more to say on this episode. Can I make two last quick references and then I think I'm done?
Sure.
One is back to the Cylons when they're on their patrol and when they come to the shuttle. I did just think it was funny that they've always tried to be pretty robotic. I know it's people in suits, and sometimes they look more or less robotic, but when they've been like walking through a base ship or in the halls, they generally do okay. Walking in the snow, you're just watching them stumble around and almost fall, and they do not look in any way intimidating. They look like they're about to fall over.
Especially now with those stupid star filters. Yeah, right? I noticed the same thing. I'm glad you brought that up.
And that I made a Harry Potter reference last time. I'll make another reference from the same book. There's these scary evil characters in Harry Potter called these Dementors, and there's something called a boggart that can basically impersonate one. Harry Potter fans, I'm grossly oversimplifying that, but there's a point where Harry runs into something, he thinks it's a Dementor, and he sees it like trip over its own feet and realizes it can't be a Dementor, it's a boggart. And that's what I was thinking about the Cylons when I see these guys stumbling and trip. The other thing I wanted to say, another reference to something that was quite good, fairly recent, was the Watchmen TV show, which won a bunch of Emmys like last year or the year before. Just I don't want to get into spoilers on that, and I don't remember where exactly some of these things came up, but for those who have seen it, the clones here, when they start walking in and all looking the same, it very much reminded me of a segment of that show involving Jeremy Irons, and I'll kind of leave it at that. I thought that was a really cool device in Watchmen, how they played with that and how that ended up paying off. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with this and how, if there's going to be something that's a satisfying payoff to the clones, or if it's just a random, like, look, clones, cool. Which Star Wars then ripped off. Although in A New Hope, they do talk about the Clone War, so maybe that's where BSG got the idea. I don't know.
Real quick filmmaking thing. Did they have lookalikes? Were they doing creative shooting for those clones? Or was that, what was going on? Did they have twins, triplets, quadruplets for those people, for those actors? Or what do you think was actually going on filmmaking-wise for those clone scenes? Because there were a few that they actually were in the same shot. And that there was definitely some later shots where in the background they gave the guy clone like a flat cap, like an Irish cabbie would wear, and then the beard and everything to make it a lot easier to make someone look like him. Mm-hmm. I thought that was smart, but I there was a couple shots where I'm like, oh, that's either the same guy or a twin or some creative filmmaking, I think.
I should go back and look. I honestly, by that point in the episode, was not really paying that close of attention.
Fair enough.
My guess would be, I'm trying to think of where the shots were. I think probably they tried as much as possible to find ways to shoot around it where, you know, they can look like multiples, but maybe they got somebody who had a twin or a triplet or something. I'm thinking of in Terminator 2, the security guard at the prison or the mental hospital, they cast somebody who had an identical twin so they could do those scenes with him and himself. Into him. Yeah. And actually, there's a couple of scenes in there where they used Linda Hamilton has an identical twin. And
oh, that's right.
And that was not why Linda Hamilton was cast in the first one, but turned out to work out very conveniently for them to be able to just have two of her there. If I was casting for this, I would think this would be one where it's like, hey, if we can find somebody who's a twin, It's not a major part, and it actually is. If they're a halfway decent actor, they're already better than some of the other actors we're using in Galactica.
Right.
So being a twin might have just been a requirement, but I don't know. I do think they shot it well to the point, like, I was never looking like, oh, there's clearly somebody who does not match, and they're just trying
Right,
to
that's what I
disguise.
thought.
So it was well
Yeah.
done.
Okay, Mark, should we rate this?
Yeah, why don't you go first this time? I need
Okay.
to see how much I need to talk you down.
Okay, I obviously like this one better than you did, and I do think that this was the best opener of a multi-part episode so far. I agree, maybe it wasn't a completely self-contained thing, but they left us on a cliffhanger. I know you might disagree on this. I liked what they did with Starbuck in this episode. It made him more human and more likable to me. I would give it 4 battle stars.
Okay. I'm in the same ballpark as you. I think I would probably be more like a 3.5. I really like the effects have continued to hold up. I really liked what they did on the ice planet. They shot it well. They found interesting locations. There's some cool stuff in here. I think if we hadn't just had the last 2 episodes we did, I would feel better about this, because it is better than some of those earlier episodes. I think you're right. It's the best first part of a multi-parter that we've seen. But I also do feel like it not only was a step back from the last 2 episodes, but sort of squandered some of the work it had done in those in terms of setting the tone of the show and the feel of the show. And I got to dock at some points for that. So I would say a 3.5.
I'm super cool with that, because in looking back, we gave The Long Patrol 4. No, we gave Long Patrol 5. We gave Lost Warrior 4. And I think that Lost Warrior is better than this.
Yeah, and I think that probably sounds about right. I think this was actually a better produced episode. Like, there's more stuff going on than in The Lost Warrior, but The Lost Warrior was better.
And it was more sci-fi-y than Lost Warrior. But I think I enjoyed the ride in Lost Warrior more than this. So I'm totally cool
I
with
definitely
3.5.
enjoyed that. When you mentioned it in terms of like setting up a multi-parter, as you said, this is better than like the first part of the pilot or the first part of Lost Planet of the Gods. And they did set up some stuff here. Like you said, there was a cliffhanger. They still really have not gotten this idea down that if it's a multi-parter, you got to have some kind of internal payoff in each episode. Because this really felt like it just sort of, okay, we're at halfway through the story. We'll just end here.
Yeah, you're right. Again, they set up some interesting stuff that I am interested to see how it pays off. But
you know what I was wondering is, I have no history or background on this to support it, but I'm just speculating. A lot of times they...
sort of our theme.
Right? Good, in keeping with our podcast. A lot of times TV shows are not shot in the order that they actually air in. And I was wondering if maybe this one... I get that narratively it has to come where it is, because they're referencing some stuff that had already happened, and, you know, to some degree, like Boxey and Moffat have to already be with Apollo, so Serena has to already have died. So we've got to be at least past Lost Planet of the Gods. But I wonder if they shot this one before, like, The Long Patrol or The Lost Warrior, because those ones I felt like they'd gotten a better handle on their tone, and maybe this was one that took some more post-production and they shot it earlier, but it ended up airing later.
Especially since it's longer. I will say in the trivia, we're going to notice between part 1 and part 2 that Richard Hatch gets a haircut. So
I also noticed that Richard Hatch was back to his overacting ways of the early episodes in this episode.
Yeah,
he's
not great.
The one line I wrote down where he's like, "We're not leaving anybody behind," and he's like turned up 3 notches higher than anyone else in the shot.
He's a little silly. Well, Mark, do you think we even need to guess what next week's episode? Well, 2 weeks from now, we'll get to that.
I think we should take a guess on how this is going to resolve.
Resolved. Okay, so our next episode, not our next episode of Deja Reviewed, I will explain that in a minute, but our next Battlestar Galactica episode is going to be Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2. You can watch along for free on NBC.com. Mark, do we think they're going to blow up the gun on Ice Planet Zero in Part 2?
So part of me thinks it's going to end up completely unrelated to anything that happened in this episode, because that wouldn't be that far off of what we've seen in the past. I think they are going to blow up the gun, and I'm going to guess it like blows up the whole planet, just because that would be more fun. I also think that Gaius's base star is going to show up, and there's going to be some... I'm going all Return of the Jedi on here and imagining this will be something better than it is, but I'm imagining they're like trying to blow up the gun on the planet. Meanwhile, in space, they're intercutting with like a battle between the
That'd be cool.
Cylons and the Colonial Fleet, and both things sort of climax at the same point. I'll say something that Battlestar at least has done pretty well to this point is the last episode of their multi-parters has been the best of the group. So
Yeah,
the first
true.
one was the third one was the best. Lost Planet of the Gods, the second one was the best. So I'm hopeful that now that they've got so much time invested in
Experience.
the setup, that it'll be exciting in the second half. That's me. What do you got?
I think that that's a great guess, and I think I'm going to tag onto it, add that the criminal who stole the gun is going to have a moment toward the end where he has a heroic sacrifice, where instead of turning on them and betraying them all, he instead like saves Apollo's life and dies himself.
Oh, nice.
That's maybe a little bit too interesting.
Yeah,
for
I don't
this,
think it's
but
going to happen, but that's a really nice idea.
I don't know, though. I mean, I was very surprised when they killed off Jane Seymour's character early on in the series. And I think that because what else are you going to do to resolve that? I think that he has to have a hero turn and then dies as a result of the hero turn.
And my question to you will be, what have we seen to this point leading you to believe that they will resolve things once they are set up?
We're going to find out in 2 weeks. Thank you all for listening. This was Deja Reviewed. If you want to watch along with us, you can use the NBC app or go to NBC.com to watch full episodes of Battlestar Galactica for free. As far as Battlestar goes, the next episode that we're going to be watching is episode 9 on NBC.com, which, as we just said, is called either The Gun or just Gun on Ice Planet Zero Part 2. Next week, we're going to take a little bit of a break from Battlestar to take a look at the old Justice League film, because Mark, maybe you can address it. Zack Snyder has a new one coming out.
Yeah, so kind of right in our wheelhouse of reboots, there was a big DC team-up film with Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Aquaman, and Flash, and Cyborg that came out in 2017. And we'll talk about this more next week, but there was some interesting history where basically the director of the film left halfway through. That was Zack Snyder, and the reins were picked up by Joss Whedon, and he finished the film and it was released. He changed a lot of things, and there was a lot of clamor to see what Zack Snyder's original vision was, and that is actually going to be released. Zack Snyder came back to Warner Brothers and finished up his version of the movie. That's going to be released March 16th or 18th. I probably should find out the exact date. But the same week, we're going to drop this episode of looking at the original version of Justice League, so you can watch that with us, or watch that ahead of time, then listen along with us, and then if you're interested, go watch the Zack Snyder version and see what they did differently.
I'm now, because I was resisting this because I'm not a big superhero movie fan, even when they're actually good.
Mike is doing this under duress.
You know, that's fine. But I am more interested because Joss Whedon was Firefly, right?
Yes, and also
I love
a whole
Firefly.
bunch of recent news about sexual harassment on the Buffy the Vampire set.
Oh, okay. When I say I love Joss Whedon, I don't mean it. Just to clarify, the Zack Snyder cut releases on March 18th, 2021. So that will be when that comes out. That should be topical for
and we
next
drop on
week.
Tuesdays, so our episode should be coming out on the 16th, so you can watch Justice League between now and then. On the 16th, listen to Deja Reviewed's take of the original one, and then on the 18th, you can watch the Zack Snyder one. Or equally likely say, I have had way too much Justice League and don't need any more. I don't need to see another version of this movie, and not watch it, whatever your tastes are.
And I think, Mark, it's on, unfortunately, a paid thing. Well, I guess Netflix was a paid thing, but it's on the HBO.
Yeah, so
on HBO,
the
right?
original Justice League is available on HBO Max now. They used to have like 15 different subscriptions.
Yeah,
So
HBO Go,
I think you can
HBO
also rent
Crush.
it or buy. Like, it's out on DVD and
Yeah,
Blu-ray and
for
everything.
sure.
I'm sure you can find it if you want to watch it.
So that's what we're going to be doing next week. If you're enjoying Deja Reviewed, please take a second right now, stop the podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts or on Google, leave us a comment wherever you're listening to us, go to our website, dejareview.com, and please subscribe and tell people about us. Also at dejareview.com, you can find all of our social media. You can send us a tweet, you can leave us a voicemail and a text message, and we hope to see you again next time with the Justice League.
Deja Review.
Maybe those weren't clones. They literally just went to casting and said, grab us 80 extras who all look the same. And since there were only 10 people in the 70s, it was pretty easy to do.
And they weren't originally clones. They're like, these goddamn people all look alike. That's the problem. They're like, what do you mean bad filmmaking? We literally can't find people that look different.